Roy, why don't you come on up? And he promised he'd give you a nice brief, but yet concise.
Well, let me tell you what I know about Kay. Her father was a chaplain. She was originally Evangelical United Brethren. She was a graduate of Oberlin. No, I didn't know what school. I knew that you graduated from Oberlin. She has a marvelous voice. She had been on the board of Ordained Ministry as a gospel. Not the others. She's pastored a number of churches in the Baltimore Conference, Brookland, Douglas Memorial for 10 years. Dave, I'm getting old.
You're doing good.
Vice Church for 8 years. Then she went to Bells, then Linganore, or that company, and then First Methodist Church in Columbia. After that, I lost contact. But the greatest debt that I owe to Kay is the fact that she opened the door for me for 23 years to be the chaplain of the Northwest Healthcare Center. And Cookie, I have to tell something on Cookie and Kay celebrated 25 years together. But Cookie used to be our church secretary at Christ Methodist. Kay stood by me when I had some problems at home. And when John, my first companion, passed, he did his celebration of life. What more can I say, Kay? Oh, she loves murder mysteries. She's a newspaperholic. And she also is still knitting kits. Not knitting kits, she crochets. Where did I get that idea? What? Oh, it's piano. See, she's putting me to the test. That's her. I guarantee you that you will be blessed, inspired, and she will give you some homework to the sermon. It is indeed my pleasure. God bless. Yeah, I know.
Thank you very much, Roy. Hey, you forgot your program. You may need it later.
She's still looking out for me.
And I do make little repairs in sewing. I learned how to sew as a Girl Scout. I can still make repairs. So I can do that much sewing. Well, it's wonderful to be with you all today. And beautiful weather. We've been enjoying all these lovely trees on the way over. It really is a sign of hope and promise for everybody to see all that. You know, in this day and age, we have so many unbelievable opportunities. There's new knowledge, there's new miracles that appear daily. And we have astounding examples of public service. For one, take our United Nations Ambassador, Samantha Power. Not only is she attractive and smart, she is engaging, and she's aware of all the underlying connections that make life so meaningful. She wears a rope bracelet with the word fearlessness on it, given to her by someone she refuses to name, protecting their identity. She is a passionate humanitarian advocate. But, in spite of such examples, who deserves what many of our world's youth, children, women, oldsters, handicapped have to live with? What they don't get. Nobody deserves the lack of resources and love and help that they don't get. Faith, uniting is all persons of every faith around the world declaring peace and prosperity is the due of everybody. Faith uniting all persons around the world declares peace and prosperity is everybody's due. Our former president, Jimmy Carter, has written a book, Call to Action, Women, Religion, Violence, and Power. It's a strong, clear call to arouse understanding and the will to collectively do what's positive and life-affirming to help everybody and to help each other. It has been the work of his life and of his foundation, along with his wife Rosalind, to do just that, to make better the lot of people around the world. Now, when Jesus entered Jerusalem, as we were read to this morning about on Palm Sunday, he knew that the entrenched powers who used other people to achieve their aims were in charge. And he knew all the horrors of his time. I mean, we have horrors today that we constantly read about in the papers. But can you imagine when there weren't multitudes of efforts to make life better, how much horrible it must have been? And so he cried over Jerusalem, even as he rode in and was greeted as a royal personage. But he rode in peace on a humble donkey, not in a grand chariot pulled by strutting horses to show his power. And in the passage from Philippians, he models not triumphant success, but humble servanthood. And he invites we followers to lives that do the same. The love of religion, faith, is made real in personal, societal commitments. Former President Jimmy Carter, in that book, A Call to Action, speaks of all the mission work that he's a part of. And just for one, I'm sure you know many examples, but there were thousands of families in 15 nations who completed a farm program called Global 2000. And by this effort, they got triple crop production, good seeds, planting in rows instead of helter-skelter, control of birds, and harvesting at the right time, and clean spring water. In 1978, he was the first American president to visit Liberia, a place that was created by freed slaves from the United States of America. But 2 years after he was there, warfare broke out. Their president was assassinated, and it took until 1995, 20 years, more than 20 years later, to make peace. And yet, in spite of all that horror, in 1997, the first woman to win election as a president in Africa was elected, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. So again, small efforts, huge results. Everything comes from a small effort. Jimmy Carter and Rosalind have dealt with the most basic wrongs: sexual trafficking, female genital cutting, genocide. He tells about one mother who strangled 8 female infants because they aren't valued in her culture. Honor killings, rape, spousal abuse. He tells of an intelligent young woman who was married to an old man who abused her and then divorced her. U.S. feminism, his wife Rosalind, plus an Apple Company award, gave her the support to get schooling and thus be able to support her son. Simple matters, simple acts. You start going to school. But done collectively and faithfully, it can all create a new day. Carter is proud in Ghana of the latrines he helped build. Yeah, I said latrines. Have you heard about this? Because they eliminated ringworm, which was killing mothers and hence families. Indeed, clean bathrooms and customs, building and using latrines, means strong communities. Clean sanitation equals healthy people, equals strong communities. Clean sanitation equals healthy people, strong people means strong communities. Mission and development deal with the basics in foreign and in domestic community building. Now, as I was thinking about this for today, it occurred to me how much I'd like to do something huge to help all the people and places that need help in our world. And Jimmy's latrines reminded me that the smallest, humblest effort is still the most helpful. Now, Cookie and I do small deeds for our relatives and our friends, and they are indeed the big things that are needed. So you and I have to realize that the small efforts that we constantly make do make a difference. I know you find that to be true in your own life, as we do in ours. As Christians, we have to face the world daily with the newspaper in one hand, or the computer and the internet in one hand, and our soul holding the world in the other hand. We have awareness and information connections all around the world. We're lucky today. Other people didn't have all that. We know what's happening everywhere, and it can keep us in touch with a great community. Love is the only way that we can balance out the horribly regressive things done in our world. I have read about $6 million worth of State Department contracts unaccounted for. That is an utterly incomprehensible fact to me. Now, take that and then counter it with the many positive World Bank actions that allow indigenous communities to overcome simple problems and prosper. Their policies counteract that of people who will not loan to women and in minorities, so there are lives that can thrive rather than be strangled or cut off. My church is the United Methodist Church, as I told you, and it has a magazine, a mission magazine called New World Outlook. Just in this thing, you see 3 women, missionaries, past and present. And you realize from that how everything that we do for God around the world is counter to the entrenched powers. Because the women in Africa didn't always have power. They don't have power now. But here we have people who have power. A teacher, a young mother who had to take time out from her family, which is supposed to be her job, to come and hear this teaching. And another woman, an older woman, who's not supposed to be valued because her time has passed. But she is valued here. Always, as Christians, we know that love balances out the evil and overcomes it. In this newest edition that I showed you of New World Outlook, we hear from Reverend Jean-Claude Masuka Maleka. He's a native of the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo. He works as a missionary in Cote d'Ivoire and Kenya. And he says, Africa desperately needs a new kind of Christian and a new way of doing church. He says, when we train people in small groups, we are creating disciples the way Jesus did. And he says, Jesus modeled a new concept of church by gathering a few men and women together and teaching them to love and obey God. The church is the only hope for the world to undergo a real transformation. The church is called to do ministry in a way that takes into account a servanthood approach, learning and meeting people's needs in order to intentionally open the doors for the gospel message. Again, small efforts, huge results. You and I cannot let our faith guard down. We have to keep on hoping and putting out positive energy that God can build futures on. All media, plus the Bible, and our faith operating through all our places of worship are our neighborhoods now. Media and our places of worship are now our neighborhoods that connect us all. It's a worldwide, universal space. It's God's view of our world, and it's becoming ours. All of us together, not just the USA view or the Chinese view, but the universal faith uniting all our world as one. That's a universal perspective. And it makes you both weep, as Jesus did over Jerusalem on that first Palm Sunday, and exalt, as we do when we know of efforts like President Carter has helped initiate, and which we too create and participate in, as we exercise our faith, uniting with the efforts of others to create pockets of hope wherever we are, and areas of support through our personal and our societal connections. So, be of good cheer. God has overcome the world, and God has sent Jesus as an ambassador to lead the way forward for us all to follow peacefully and powerfully. God bless you. God bless the world.
Amen.